It is time for your Hoboken real estate market update, the mid-year version. Yes, believe it or not, half of 2023 is already in the books. We're going to take a look back at what's happened so far, what versus 2022, where we are today, and then what we think might happen for the rest of the year. Hey guys, it's Jeff Bonk here with the HBB Group and eXp Realty, and we've had the pleasure of helping thousands of clients over the last 10 years buy, sell, rent, and invest here in Hoboken, Hudson County, and New Jersey in general. And today, let's jump into that market update, compare what happened to 22 versus 23. And to do that, the first thing we really need to look at and set the stage is mortgage rates. Where were mortgage rates in early January 2022 versus where are they now? We had them start really low last year in 2022 in January. They were just around 3%, 3.1%. And over that 6-month stretch of the first half of 22, they ballooned to almost 5.25%. So there's a big move which affected the real estate market. But what it affects it even more is when we came into this year in 2023, they were already at 6.5%, and they're ending this first half about 7%. So that is kind of the stage that we need to set. If you've been following the real estate market, you've been following the economy, you know that's the big headline almost every day is where are interest rates, where are mortgage rates, what is it doing to the economy? So that's really what we need to think about first. All these things we're going to talk about are really driven by mostly interest rates, a few other factors as well that we'll get into, but interest rates is the key thing you need to understand that's moving this market, and it's going to change from 22 to 23. So first, we're going to look at new listings. In the first half of 2022, there were almost 1,000, 954 to be exact, new listings that came on the market here in Hoboken. When you compare that to this year, the first half of 23, we only had 501 new listings on the market. So a drop of 47% in new listings. Now, why? Why is that happening? Interest rates, back to those mortgage rates, right? If you own a property and you have a 3% mortgage rate on it because you bought it 3, 4, 5 years ago, are you ready to sell that property and then go buy a new property with a 7% mortgage rate today? Not so excited about doing that. You need to really have a compelling reason to list that property. So we saw new listings completely, 50% is almost a plummet, which is going to affect the rest of the market when supply comes down that much. So that's a look at supply. Now let's take a look at demand. We saw a big drop in supply, but was there as big a drop in demand? So in the first half of 2022, we saw 666 properties go under contract here in Hoboken. And in 23, we only saw 426 go under contract. Now that's a drop of 36%, but new listings dropped by 47 if you remember. So although demand has definitely dropped somewhat, has it dropped as much as supply? No. What's that going to do to pricing? We're going to find out in a few minutes. Usually, we would assume that it would continue to appreciate, things continue to go up because demand dropped less than supply. The next thing we want to take a look at is how many of those under contract properties actually got to the closing table. Now, closings and sold properties are a little bit of a lagging indicator because it takes about 30 to 60 days for a property to close, depending if it's cash, mortgage, what the scenario is. But it still does tell us a story. So in the first half of 2022, we saw 457 properties close out of the 666 that went under contract. In 23, we saw only 307 close out of the 426 that went under contract. So a bigger drop off in how many went from under contract to closing, and why? Why is that the case? Well, one, the first thing is that's a lagging indicator. So November, December were very slow in 22 because that's really when interest rates really took off. Buyers really backed away from the table. But the other is there's a little bit of buyer remorse going on in the market. There's people that have to make 5 or 6 offers on different properties before they get one accepted right now because of how little inventory there is. There's people that make offers thinking interest rates are around 6, but then they popped over a week and they're at 7, and they're like, ooh, no, I don't like this rate anymore. So we're seeing buyers back away sometimes, and we're seeing some deals fall apart. People are getting a little bit more worried about inspection items or appraisal items and things like that than they were a few years ago when interest rates were at 3% and the money was free. So who cares? Buy everything. Now people are being a little more cautious, and we're seeing a little bit more of a drop. What does that mean for you as a seller? As a seller, be a little bit more cautious when you're vetting your buyers. If you have 2 or 3 offers, the highest price might not always be the best deal. What's the best terms? Have you talked to their agent? Have you talked to their lender? Do we know how serious this buyer is versus are they, just getting started? Could they flake out? Could they get a little nervous on this one? So do a little bit more vetting to make sure that you're really going to succeed as a seller in this market. All right, so moving on to pricing now. Crazy numbers, right? Interest rates are up, listings are plummeting, contracts are down, but not as much. So what the heck does that mean for pricing, right? So in 2022, in the first half, the average price sold of a Hoboken home was $956,000, and that was from an asking price of $954,000. So a couple thousand over asking price. That was the first half of 22. In the first half of 23, we actually saw that number jump pretty aggressively to almost 7% higher to $1.02 million or $1,020,000 average closing. And that's from an average asking price of $1,019,000. So $1,000 higher. 22, 2,000 higher. 23, 1,000 higher. So very similar with over asking amounts. But the difference is 7% higher, almost 6.7% higher of average closing prices. So although the buyer demand dropped, interest rates went up, seller demand dropped enough that it actually caused appreciation in the market. So why is this happening? Listings are down, demand is down, but pricing's up. The reason that we're really seeing this kind of effect in the market is if you own, let's say, $1 million property at a 3% mortgage rate, and you're going to buy a $2 million property because you're trading up and you're going to buy it at 7%, your monthly payment for your home is going to somewhere around triple. Now that's just not exciting, right? But if you're renting, let's say a 1-bedroom for $3,500, your mortgage payment might only be $4,000 if you were to buy, even with today's 7% interest rates. So we're seeing people that are renting or first-time buyers way more motivated to spend that money because the difference from renting is not that much. But people who are selling going, we're one of them. I'm like, I can't, that doesn't make sense to me right now. I don't want to list my property and triple my mortgage payment for just, an extra bedroom or a little bit of a different home. So that's really why we're seeing this kind of compression of activity, but still appreciation of pricing in this market. The one last thing we'll look at to tie this up and really show the strength of the market and the kind of speed of the market is in 2022, the average home in Hoboken was on the market only 6 days before it sold. So you'd think maybe that goes up, right? People are worried about interest rates. I think it only went up 2 days. It's 8 days in 2023. Even though people are kind of slower to pull the trigger, maybe backing out of some contracts because they get a little nervous, there's just not enough inventory. There's always a couple buyers for almost every property that gets listed today. So that's a quick look at the sales market in Hoboken in the first half of 23 versus the first half of 22. So let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the rental market before we jump into where we are today and where we think the rest of the year finishes. So the rental market is strong. It's remaining strong. In 2022, we saw 832 rentals get done in the first half of the year. That was about a price of about $3,300 and 6 days on the market, real quick. In 2023, we saw a few less, so 723, but we didn't see much less demand, so pricing went up. We were almost at 3,700. So 33 to 3,700, that's over 10% appreciation from the year before, which is another contributing factor to why we're seeing less properties get listed for sale. If you can get great rents and they're going up 10% a year, I'm thinking twice about selling that property if I'm moving out, moving to the suburbs, or moving to a bigger place. So we're seeing a lot of property owners choose to rent their properties rather than sell them. Days on market, everything was moving the first weekend. So the rental market, although we haven't seen the supply and demand really shift dramatically like we saw on the sales side, we saw prices really appreciate over 10%, which is a dramatic move in 1 year. All right, so now that's where we came from in the first half of this year. Where are we today? What are we looking at in this current environment in early July? First of all, we have 79 active sale listings. That's about average with what we've seen all year, really going back probably 18 months, all the way to the beginning of 22. That number has remained flat, and really that only fluctuated maybe 5 or 10 listings at a time. On the rental side, we are kind of creeping up a little bit. We have 125 active rentals on the market. That's maybe 25 higher than our average over the last 12, 18 months. We've been living around 100, which is extremely low. So the move to 125 is really not that dramatic of a move. What we're also seeing right now is what we kind of expect is a seasonal slowdown. Summertime is here. Kids just got out of school. There was Memorial Day. There was 4th of July. It's 100 degrees outside right now. We're seeing a little bit of a slowdown in buyer and renter demand. But we're talking about a slowdown from like 5 offers to 1 or 2 offers, right? We're not seeing like places sit on the market or anything crazy, but we are seeing some more opportunity to get something around asking price, maybe a little below asking price, maybe get to negotiate. Ooh, weird concept that we haven't seen in the market in years. Negotiate on either rent or sales just a little bit rather than just having to immediately go over asking price. We are seeing highly desirable places though, like well-priced or even, if it's really desirable, high-priced, places fly. We just saw a place in this building in the Hudson T sell for 1.5. That most recent comp was like 1.3 6 months ago. So it was a high price. It was a great property, and it moved like that. But we're seeing some stuff that's kind of more in the middle of the road, maybe overly priced, not really turnkey, not renovated, not that nice. They might sit for a week or two, maybe negotiate 1% or 2% under asking price. So it really does matter the product you have, and the pricing matters secondarily. But if you have a great product, you can price high right now. If you have not a great product, you got to kind of be a little bit more cautious with your pricing. We're seeing rentals slow down just a touch too. We saw every rental go up $100, $200 almost for similar units, boom, 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 all the way in the last 18 months. Now it's kind of plateaued. So we've kind of locked in a rate, I think, that is what renters are kind of willing to pay, and that's it. We're seeing that because we've only seen 1 or 2 applications per listing over the last few months when we were seeing 5 and 6, which was why the prices just kept driving higher and higher each time. So I don't know if it's seasonality or if it's the market kind of hitting a little bit of a plateau, but either way, we're seeing a little bit of calmness, a little bit of slowdown, and a little bit of just more of a civilized market right now, honestly, in the last few months leading into the middle of the summer here. The last thing that we are seeing is we're seeing a pretty big slowdown. I made a video about this a few weeks ago during holiday weekends, right? We just had two of them that went by. We saw like properties, maybe there was only one or two like this on the market at a time, but all of a sudden 3 or 4 built up over a week or two. And then all of a sudden they were gone again. So if you are looking to kind of maybe time the market a little bit, look at some of those hot vacation weeks, look at some of those upcoming holiday weekends that we have like Labor Day, and maybe set up to look at properties that weekend. You might find yourself getting a little bit of a deal, or at least not being up against 3 or 4 other people at the same time. So that's a look at where we are right now based on where we came from this year, where we sit today. Let's talk a little bit about how we think this market may finish in the remainder of 23, and then maybe that helps you figure out exactly what you're going to do and plan out your next move. All right, so here we go. Where are we going from here? Take out my crystal ball. Let's figure out exactly what's going to happen. Now, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to break down 3 different scenarios, and they're all going to be based off of interest rates, right? Because that drove us to where we are today. It's really determined what that market has done over the last 12 to 18 months. So whatever happens with interest rates is really going to affect what happens for the rest of this year into 24. Weird to say 24. Doesn't feel like that's something that should be spoken about yet, but we're 6 months away from 2024. So here's the 3 scenarios. One is interest rates stay the same. One is interest rates go up. And the other is interest rates come down. So what happens, what's the best guess of what could happen in all 3 of those scenarios? So let's start with the first one. Interest rates stay the same. They bounce around between 6 and 7%. Let's just call that staying the same. We expect to kind of see the same type of market that we saw the first half of this year. People are not going to be motivated to sell. People are still going to need to buy. It's going to make sense to buy if they're renting because rents are still going to be strong if that's the case. And we're going to see a market with lower activity, but probably gradual price appreciation into 24. Second scenario, interest rates go up. Let's call that over 7%. Over 7%, I think we could potentially see even a greater slowdown of activity in the market. The seller is going to be even less motivated to sell. The buyers are going to be less motivated to buy because even though they're making sense between 6 and 7, once you get to 7, 8% mortgage rates, that's going to really affect the bottom line of what the monthly payments are going to be for a would-be buyer. So we could see prices kind of flatline. We could see maybe a little bit of depreciation from some forced sellers if the buyers aren't there in the marketplace. A lot of experts aren't expecting rates to go too much higher, so this is kind of a smaller percentage or a fringe case. But if that does happen, it could be an opportunity if you're a buyer to pick something up and refi in a couple of years if rates do come down. Or it could be an opportunity as a seller to sell that property if there's still some good buyers in the marketplace. So keep an eye on that one. What we hope happens, and what I think is a better chance of happening in the next 12 to 18 months, especially going into an election cycle, and I'll make another video about that and what we expect really to come up against the election cycle historically, rates come down. Let's call that below 6%. So below 6%, I think we see an increase in 2 things. I see an increase in pricing and activity. So we're going to see sellers who are willing to now sell their properties because, look, I'm only trading in my 3% mortgage rate for maybe a 5, 5.5. That's way less hard to swallow than it would be going to a 7% interest rate. And we're going to see buyers go, wow, look at my buying power. It just got so much better. I can afford $1 million when I was only at 800 when rates were at 7. Now they're at 5. My payments would be the same, 800 versus $1 million. So we're going to see more motivated buyers, more motivated sellers. We're hopefully going to see all activity rise and people be able to find homes that they really want to move to, which is a struggle right now. And we're going to see prices probably continue to go up only because we're seeing them go up now in this environment. If we see more sellers come on the market, I expect to see even more buyers come back to the market and see the prices really continue to appreciate. Those are the 3 scenarios. Who knows which one's going to happen? Every time we think we know where interest rates are going and they seem like they're tailing back down, something happens in the economy, they spike again. Every time we think we're seeing a top and we're going to start, or we see interest rates going high and we're going to keep flying, something happens in the economy, they come back down again. So we're going to make these videos as we've been doing every single month so you make sure that you can stay up to date and know exactly what's happening in this market. Your situation, like everybody else, is specific and special to you. So call, reach out, contact us. We'll have one of our awesome advisors reach out to you, talk you through your scenario, talk about what type of properties are on the market, what type of timing, what type of interest rates, and customize all this crazy information I just dumped on you down to your personal situation. So if you need anything, feel free to reach out. We love having those conversations, and we'll see you next month on, what will that be? The end of July's market update. Have a great summer.